So I'll call to order the meeting, Kingston Springs Regional Planning Commission, November 14th. Roll call voting members: Keith Allgood.
Present.
Tony Campbell. Here. Tom Cullen. Here. Tony Gross.
Here.
Brian McCain. Here. Mike Patno's here. Ben Remick, absent. Chuck Slater. Absent. Bob Stoller. Here. Okay. Non-voting staff: Sharon Armstrong.
Here.
John Lawless.
Here.
And Martha Rowe.
Here.
Okay, so we have a quorum. You have the October 10th Planning Commission meeting minutes before you.
I move we approve as certified.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, the minutes are approved. We have the agenda for today in front of you.
I move to approve.
Second.
Okay, we have a second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, so the agenda's approved. All right, first item under old business is project update on the McPherson property. Is anybody providing an update today?
Pardon?
Is anybody providing an update today on the McPherson property, item A?
Yes,
under
I
old
have
business?
one.
Okay.
I received a call from the surveyor working with Mr. McPherson on that project this morning. The surveyor relayed that there is an easement on that property that traverses the property,
Okay.
starting kind of where Miss Eva's house is next door,
Mhm.
all the way across the property to the other side to a property behind the storage buildings. When the plat was filed with us in May of last year for the McPherson property, the easement was not disclosed on the plat.
So it goes all the way across to Carl's
There's a-
property?
There's a lot behind
Okay.
the storage buildings. There's a house on that property, and the lady, I think, has been accessing her property through a lot of the storage facility,
Yeah.
The driveway, they have an access.
which they've allowed her to do, but that's not her easement. Her easement runs across Mr. McPherson's property. So the surveyor and I spent a couple of minutes on the phone talking about resolution. I have advised him to appear at the December meeting so we can revocate the existing plat because it does not contain the easement. It's a preliminary plat, it's not a final, so it's never been filed, it's just been approved here. Then he will have to present a new preliminary plat for your consideration. Then they can move on to final plat. Second update, the core samples were taken 11 days ago. I did attend the withdrawal of the core samples. One was taken in the area that I had concerns about construction debris to ensure there was no asbestos remaining materials left on the property. The other one was taken for the purposes of volatile organic compounds and compaction. So both of those have been taken. In your packet tonight, you have Sanair report. There is no remaining asbestos on the property site and the water tested clean. So we're good.
We also, you said, looking for VOC, so,
The VOC report will not come until next week.
okay.
But I wanted to bring you this one because it was already in, it has been reviewed, has been looked at. I have spoken to the lab to ensure that the proper administration is done on the test. You will see the test report at the back. The samples were withdrawn by a third-party firm from the ground. They were sealed in my presence and tagged, and then delivered to the lab in those containers. There were 3 actually taken, the compaction one. I'll be interested to see how we're doing on that. For phase 2 only. And then the asbestos is clear, so we're waiting on VOC and we're waiting on compaction. The issue with the easement that runs across the property, the question was posed, could they run her easement, move her easement to have it lie within the road base that Mr. McPherson is proposing for access to his property. And I told him that's a planning commission discussion. One, he has to submit the plat so we can see exactly what they're talking about. There are a number of utilities that will need to be brought up into the site if the project is approved, and we have not yet approved the development project. But if that is going to be the case, the subdivision regulations, because he's going to own everything from the road back, We're not gonna own any of that infrastructure, the roads, the tanks, nothing. He's gonna buy them, he's gonna own them, he's gonna maintain them. But we can do that because you are allowed to serve one additional lot off a private easement, but it has to be constructed to city standards. And city standards will be, since it's a PUD, whatever this body decides that it should be. That's where we left it. He advised me that he would probably have an amended preliminary plat ready next week. I'll review it. You will see it on the December meeting agenda.
Okay.
Now, does that landowner have to approve the easement? The landowner, Bessie Pack.
That's all I have on the McPherson property.
Does that easement go around the storage facility area?
It's all the way at the back.
I'm going to apologize again for the deafness, but I'm struggling.
Well, I was just wondering if that easement crossed the property of the storage building.
It does not. It lies, my understanding from what the surveyor is relaying to me, is that it lies behind the vertical line of the storage buildings and goes behind it to
Now,
access.
if you look at Eva Lee's house, right behind it is a road going up over the hill, that's it.
Yes, sir.
Mm-hmm.
So
What do you
it
mean
is
it's not?
an
We tied
unfortunate.
into it, but that is not the easement road.
I think it is.
We won't know what the easement is until, I'm conveying what I've been told. So until we get that.
But we'll see
document,
that from the surveyor in December,
I'm
right?
hesitant
Okay.
to proffer an opinion one way or the other.
We'll see it when we get the documents.
It will be disclosed, and I will make a trip to deed. And we do have somewhat of an asset on the planning commission with Mr. McCain, so with your blessing, I'm going to try to twist his arm and have him help me review what's going to be submitted. I want to make sure what lands on the plat matches what's on the deed before we bring it to you. So that's where we are with that. I have, in the past month since we met last, denied permission for them to bore under the state road for utilities because we're just not there yet. We can't give him permission to do anything other than the grading work on that lot until he gets approval for this project. Because as you remember with Thornton's, TDOT will require the city to give him a letter, give TDOT a letter saying that we have approved his project before they will allow him to touch their road. That's where we are.
Another drive-through.
So irrelevant to the McPherson project, what does that do for the easement that she's currently using for that property?
He can't do anything with it other than what he's doing right now.
I'm talking about the easement that she's currently using.
Next to the
Is that
storage.
something that can be taken away from her? or-
Until
Yeah.
I know where it lies and what her access legally is, we can't answer that question.
It depends on if she has an easement in writing with the storage
With the storage people.
facility.
Yeah.
She does.
Presumably she does, because they modified their whole design of one front corner
Right.
of the structure to accommodate her to be able to turn in there with a horse trailer, if I remember that correctly.
Yeah, and it'll be great to not have that right there at that light, I would imagine.
So
If
I-
in fact it gets rerouted. Consider that being a big issue, her turning in right there, with that light being there, so close to it or whatever.
Hasn't been.
Yeah, I just remember it was.
She's been going in and out of
Yeah,
there for years.
Right.
Okay.
Does she have a written access, or do you know?
I'm not done title searching her property, so
Well,
I would
well-
assume she would if he granted her permission to be on her property to redesign this building. I would assume he would have had a written easement to do so.
We'll know more next month.
Is that
Okay.
Bessie's property? The Bessie Pack? I mean, Miss Pack?
Yeah, Bessie has a place back there.
Okay. That's who's using it now?
Her daughter is.
Her daughter is.
You know that
If
wrong.
you see Bessie going in there, it is a traffic hazard.
You see Bessie
Good God, you
going.
about ran over me.
It's my understanding that Mr. McPherson has had conversations with that property owner about purchasing the property in the
Yeah.
future, so we'll see how that goes.
I can tell you how that response went.
He's had a lot of conversations with him.
I
Okay.
imagine it will not fetch a fire sale price.
So we finished with item A.
We are.
So item B is a project update on Patel Sunoco.
You also have within your packet a copy of this memo with a traffic study attached. Mr. Patel's firm that he hired, which is the Fish, provided a traffic study, somewhat voluminous. I spent several hours, several days going over it, vetting it, and what you have as a memo on the front, here's the front and the back page, is my review of the traffic study. We provided the applicant with the Thornton study, with the latest state TPR from TDOT, and with the McPherson traffic study for his use in constructing this traffic study, because we wanted all that data internalized in this document. And what it boils down to, if you look at item 1 on memo, you will see that the eastbound left turn lane is already rated an F, which is a loss of service F. That's a TDOT rating. F is kind of the bottom of the barrel, which is saying that the loss of service exceeds their tolerance level for an approach to an interstate and on a state road. It already did that before anything was built back in the day.
So the left turn lane, you mean turning left into the Sunoco?
The eastbound turn lane is the approach to I-40.
Okay.
So we're talking about approach to the interstate. TDOT doesn't study usually, unless you get a localized traffic study, individual driveways. So if you remember back to the Thornton's traffic study, that approach to the interstate was already rated an F before they ever constructed. So it's still rated an F. The distinction between the traffic that is produced by Thornton's and the traffic that is proposed to be produced by the McPherson property and the traffic that's proposed to be produced by the Sunoco Highway 55 Burger Restaurant resulted in a net traffic delay of almost 2 minutes. Those 3 projects in total. So that's going to create friction on the road, I would imagine. It produces 33 to 36 cars at peak hour additional traffic on the road from the Sunoco location only. All of these are within development tolerance. The project is already approved. The reason that we require this, one, there's a state requirement that if you're building on a state highway, you have to have a traffic study. Our zoning ordinance requires a traffic study. So we collected this data and all the data that we collect as a planning commission eventually makes its way to TDOT. And if we're smart, we provide copies of these to TDOT so that when you have discussions about road improvements and stacking availability and off-ramps or on-ramps that don't allow enough stacking room, these are really handy documents to have. So the purpose of me bringing it to you tonight is to approve the structure of the traffic study and what I've provided to you in the memo. It internalizes all 3 of those projects and the impact to the road. And if you go through the document, you will see where I highlighted the appropriate sections that ended up in this memo for you.
Can you explain something for me?
Yes, sir.
The first entry there for Liven Hills Road, eastbound ramps, I-40, eastbound left turns, rated F, 10 vehicles, 298 seconds per vehicle.
That
What
is
are we
correct.
talking about?
Before the Thornton's was constructed, that loss of service, that second per vehicle delay is what you're talking about.
298, that's what? 5 minutes?
Yes, sir. Before the Thornton's was constructed, it was 217 seconds, which is also within this traffic report. It was already at that.
What does it mean? I mean, it says...
Oh, it just means there's a delay from when you pull out and get in the lane of traffic to when you're going to be able to move forward.
You may have said there.
So with the 3 projects
The bridge?
collectively, the Thornton's, Mr. McPherson's proposed
No,
construction.
I'm more concerned about the 298. What does it mean for 298 seconds per
Sit
vehicle?
there in peak traffic for
5 minutes before
That's
you can
what it
turn.
means. Yes, sir.
Onto the interstate, so you'll be up on the bridge and backed up probably.
Yes, sir.
To the high school, or the grade school.
Going to Nashville.
That's
Yeah.
exactly what it is.
Currently, we're at 3.5 minutes.
it was before those construction, I'm not defending it or saying it's a good thing or a bad thing, it's related. But before those three projects were internalized, and keep in mind the McPherson project is also internalized in this data, even though the project has not been approved. And it resulted in another 63 seconds of delay because of its location and proximity on East Kingston Springs Road to the red light and cars pulling out of that development. You were at,
It resulted in how many seconds, sorry?
pardon me, 217 seconds.
But the McPherson 63, so
Yeah.
that 63 seconds is included in this 298.
It is, and the Thornton's delay seconds were also included in this as well, and theirs was 32. How that worked out in the engineering draft, I don't know, but it
Yeah.
did. So it's a net increase of 109 seconds
For Sunoco.
for
Oh,
all
oh.
collectively.
Sunoco,
Thornton's, McPherson's.
That's correct.
all the new development.
2 minutes. So those three projects, if built out as
Well,
proposed.
it's not necessarily Sunoco either, it's the restaurant, right?
It's the
Because
restaurant.
Sunoco was previously, I mean, it's a pre-existing
Sunoco was already
business.
previously there.
We're talking about
absorbed.
just the restaurant portion, so really.
Has
So
this been
this-
given to the state? And how does the state weigh this information in their decisions to spend DOT money?
On the record, the state weighs this when you have a level F. What normally happens, and John and I had a brief discussion about that today. We don't have control over the access corridor to the interstate. It's a state road. So, as an example, when Thornton's came in, we weren't really crazy about the idea of them having the driveways so close together for the trucks and the cars. But it's a state road. We don't get to control that. What they look at is when a corridor is rated F, unfortunately what usually happens is when there's a really bad accident on the approach to the corridor, then TDOT pays attention. But in favor of Kingston Springs is TDOT is now having discussions about corridor improvements on I-40 right now. They're having those discussions. So this data, I would like to suggest that we provide this study, the Thornton study, and the McPherson study because of its proximity to the interstate and Liven Hills Road to TDOT so that when the RPO is having those discussions now.
What does the discussions mean? Widening the interstate? Widening?
You
From
know,
Bellevue to Kingston Springs?
I'm always
or
surprised
Dixon?
the approaches that they take. As an example, when the Thorntons went in at exit 32 off of 24, they built an entirely separate lane coming off the interstate just for the trucks. So that the truck traffic was separate from car traffic in order to get to the businesses that they were trying to get to off of I-40 at exit 62. So sometimes it results in a lengthening of the approach, getting on the interstate, off the interstate, or a widening of it. But I don't see that happening with a T-grant on the ground, sidewalk improvements, and frankly, there's no room to put more lanes. So it would have to be improvements that would occur either in the installation of a red light, which would not be a really good idea because it backs you up into East Kingston Springs Road. So the preferred methodology that's usually applied when that happens is to lengthen the on-ramps.
Well, I don't.
You're gonna widen the bridge?
I don't know that they
Maybe.
care.
But then what happens is you have 2 lanes and a turn lane coming into a bridge. If you widen the bridge, what have you accomplished? So that's a design dilemma for TDOT.
Well,
In
the
some
thing is-
instances, like with the Lowe's in Pleasant View, they created a totally separate approach to the interstate to service
The
that
thing that bothers you
distribution.
is that we're in the process of going to loosen this up there. The paving project's gonna tear it all up.
Yep.
And then anything they do to that ramp's gonna tear it all up, so it just.
Well, that is a concern. Mr. Campbell and I agree with you, but I will say that when improvements are proposed within counties by TDOT, as an example, the corridor from Ashland City to Pleasant View was approved by the commission and the RPO in 2008. It came to the Cheatham County Planning Commission for review before it went. They will start construction next year, 12 years. So that's what you're looking at from a realistic standpoint. The unfortunate thing for local development, local governments, is that we have no control over how they spend their dollars. But it's a really good idea to provide this information within the RPO meetings and also to take it to a district meeting for TDOT. Sometimes those are more successful when you sit down in their office and lay these things out and have that discussion than you will ever have in a formal meeting that's held elsewhere. That's how things get done. So I provided this to you to tell you that the three things collectively, if billed, will add 109-second vehicle delay.
So basically from 3 minutes to 5 minutes.
That is correct.
Okay. Any questions?
Now, if you
This-
separate out just the Sunoco, or the Highway 55 restaurant, and keep referring to it because
Yeah,
the
the Highway
Sunoco is open, but it's the Highway 55 restaurant. If you separate out that delay, it's 41 seconds.
All right, where,
At peak hour
At peak.
in the afternoon.
And then, how many seconds was,
63
is
for McPherson if it's approved, and then the rest of it goes to Thornton.
where are we as far as the Patels going ahead and doing what they want or need to do?
I spoke to the firm that does the build-out for Highway 55 burgers. Elizabeth Sherrill called me, we had a nice conversation. They are in the process of doing the construction plans for submission. Those will come here. If we go back in history, because this has been a somewhat lengthy project, the lighting, the signage, the built outside exterior building, all of that's already been done, gone to the design review committee and been approved. The signage for the Highway 55 burger was approved along with the Sunoco signage the night that you approved that use. So all he lacks at this point is construction plans and the approval of this traffic study. So that's where you are.
There's a Highway 55 burger sign out by the road?
They're allowed to, because it is a collective commercial location, they're
Right.
allowed to have one additional pole sign, which has been designed, vetted,
An
gone through
additional
design
pole sign.
review committee, and one additional building sign on that end of the building. So the signage is relatively minimal considering some of the other locations, but because they have more than one business, and it is divided into Suite A and Suite B.
So that's going on the existing pole?
They will have a separate pole sign for the
separate-
Highway 55.
Okay.
They have chosen a monument design, so it will be lower key. And then the other sign is a very small, relatively small sign that goes on the front of the building. No other advertisement can be approved. They were allowed an additional 40 square feet for a pole sign, 20 square feet for the building, and that's all they could get.
So, a question I have, we've approved, or about to approve, if we approve 55, if we approve McPherson, if they get to that stage, between Thornton, McPherson, and 55, 3 projects, and we've increased the vehicle time, or will have, by about 50% greater, from about 200 to 300.
That is correct.
And so, at what point, and it's TDOT's problem.
Well, it's not that it's TDOT's problem. What normally happens in those discussions is you look at TDOT and say, we need road improvements. They look at you and say, stop approving things.
Right.
And you look at them and say, but if we don't approve things, and, approve things.
And that's what I'm getting at is, what I don't have any feeling for is, where do we say stop? What is the number of seconds that we say stop? Is it 10? Is it 20? I mean, we don't want the town to all of a sudden say, why can't I get out of my driveway? I'm speaking theoretically, but why can't I get out of my driveway for 10 minutes because we have 5 new developments and nobody can get on the interstate? So I don't know where that is. I don't know if 5 minutes is even close to it, but I'm just wondering, do we kind of know what a stopping point looks like? Or are we just keep going along because, in my mind, it's TDOT's problem is kind of how it sounds.
What's the next phase of our planning process is looking at those?
If I may, we can provide an animation.
Well, it's not so
that will
much,
show you what that looks like.
it's more like when does the knowledge, who knows? Who is the person who knows? hey, you know what?
It's enough.
This is the point that you don't want to get to. Is there a traffic engineer that would know that answer?
If I may, Mayor Gross and I spoke with Melanie Murphy, she's senior transportation planner at TDOT, about a community mobility plan grant that TDOT offers that would allow us to study exactly that, study traffic patterns, study the potential of an additional corridor where Lubin Hills is. So we're still in the process of, that grant just now opened, so we're in the process of gathering information and speaking with her again to see if that's something that we might potentially get involved with.
And that sounds great. What I'm saying is, I feel pretty ignorant because we're in the process of what looks like potentially 3 projects, counting Thornton's, and I really don't know what 5 minutes means. I really don't know if I'm going to wake up if all 3 things are open and say, oh my goodness, I have to pull off at Lawrence Foods because I can't get to the corner for 20 minutes. I don't know what it looks like. I don't know. But somebody knows. I think. Somebody knows what that answer looks like.
A traffic engineer does understand that, and that's kind of what you have in this report, is a traffic engineer explaining that to you from the applicant's perspective. To give you a better idea of what that means and what it looks like, we can animate these numbers within a GIS program and show you what it looks like. We can show you how far the traffic stacks, whether or not it goes back into East Kingston Springs Road, how long each car is going to sit there. We can introduce the truck traffic from Thornton's to it. We can introduce all of those things and show it in an animated version. It's something that I kind of play with for fun. I have a lot of GIS and I run these scenarios all the time. We did it in Pleasant View. Everybody's laughing when I said it's fun. It's really kind of inputting the data and then automating the process. I did one in Pleasant View for Pleasant View Road. They approved 2,100 units in that adjacent area for residential construction on a road that wasn't wide enough to have passing traffic without taking people's mirrors off, shoulders on the side of the road. So emergency vehicles were just lost. And we animated, and it lined up all the way down Pleasant View Road and out Mosley Ferry on the other end.
Well, see, those of us that live on the west side of Kingston Springs don't care about what happens on East Kingston Springs.
Animation, we're on this side of the river, we don't care what happens over there. But the animation.
Bob's the only one here on East Kingston.
And I'll go Highway 70.
Demonstrating what your lag times are at peak, which direction your lag times are. And we can introduce any number of scenarios, an ambulance, fire truck, we can introduce all of those.
I mean, that I can understand that would be helpful to me. I'm just saying, do we know an expert who can tell us you guys are fine? It's not great, but you're okay, or holy cow, you guys are running into a brick wall here. I mean, I don't know where we are.
We don't know.
You can employ any one of a number of traffic engineers that can supply that information for you. The issue that the traffic engineer is going to have is the same issue that I have and that you have. It's already rated an F, so it's a saturated corridor. From the perspective of movement, flow, and safety, it's already rated an F. It was rated an F 15 years ago.
Yeah.
So with no funding put into it and no identification by the city or by the state of an adjacent area to stream that traffic, there's zero potential. We can't force the state to make improvements to its road. We can't force the federal government to fix the interstate. What we can do is begin through the next planning step that we're already going to talk about tonight, looking for an alternate route to relieve that traffic pressure, and that's what people do. They widen another surface street, they redirect traffic in another pattern. That's how it's traditionally held, because from concept to funding to letting to acquisition to building for a road is around 12 years.
Okay, so then with all that, thank you for that. What I'm hearing, outside of all the technical stuff is. Going from 3 minutes to 5 minutes is probably fine. But we don't really know beyond that what's going to be fine. So if we ultimately end up approving these 3 projects, we're probably okay. That's kind of what I'm hearing.
Well, we went too far now. I mean,
Yeah.
Well, I know,
Yeah.
but so when the next person comes in here and says, hey, I'm buying that land behind Sonic, and here's what I'm going to put in here, I'm all of a sudden thinking, okay, how close are we to the cliff? Or really, the cliff's a long way out, so it doesn't matter. But I don't know.
I mean, well, Patel's have a big pantry right now, more or less.
Yeah.
McPherson's been skipping rope. So, I mean, we have no choice, really.
I know at this point, I'm just thinking, we got somebody
But
else.
definitely both corridors out. You know, if you go into Pegram through Kingston Springs Road, any morning you can tell, because most mornings there's a wreck in between here and Pegram based on the bridge that they put in, the latest one they put in where they widened it. Something happened with where water holes, but there's a wreck there probably, I don't know, there's 365 days in a year. I bet there's one there 50.
Are you
So-
getting that documented? To show TDOT. That's how we get that road
Yeah.
fixed.
I mean,
He's
that's,
talking about the interstate.
Yeah, the
not
interstate,
Kingston.
that's what I'm
I
talking
thought
about.
you
Yeah.
were talking about
No,
between
but you can't. What I'm saying is, you've already see due process in what it's going to cause when people can't get on the interstate there, because you can't get on it now. You have to turn around and go through Pegram,
70, yeah.
and by the time you get to, I don't know,
South
605, Kingston Springs Road is backed up past Harpeth Meadows, close to the curve. So.
Would it be beneficial to this committee if we did have someone that was a traffic engineer to come and break this down, for lack of a better term, layman's terms, for everyone to...
I'm just wondering, where's the red line out there, so we don't wake up and we have to pull off into Lawrence's food.
You remember, I think there's a couple of 1,000 acres there at Macquarie Lane that they've talked about developing on the west side of Macquarie, on the south side of the road.
I think that grant and a citywide traffic study would be fundamental.
Yeah.
We'll pursue that for
Okay.
sure.
Where we're at right now.
Okay.
Chairman Patno, just as a brief response to your question, that line has already been reached. It was reached on that particular approach, when it's rated an F, that means it's saturated. So,
Okay.
one of the
Everything
other
else is
benefits
building
to
on that.
doing this,
I wonder what they base that on. Well, that traffic moves along.
with this, if this grant can be secured, then you can bring personnel on board that can also help you to identify alternate routes that would be suitable, that would be easier to find and to lay out. But frankly, you have X numbers of feet and X numbers of cars, and those two things aren't working together. So there has to be an alternate methodology.
Okay. All right, well, thank you. Sorry for the time.
One final question. You said project description for the restaurant says a drive-through window.
There is a drive-through window which you approved when you
What about on the other
approved
side,
use.
the
That's
store
the
side?
drive-through window.
That's not the restaurant.
Are they gonna run it across?
When he came in and presented what he did, and we had that long protracted discussion, that drive-through window was approved.
Does that,
That's not in the restaurant, though.
No, it's in the
It is
gas
not.
Yeah, I understand that, but this document says proposed project has a drive-through window.
Well, I'm assuming that the traffic engineer says there'll be a drive-through window for the restaurant, or it won't be
Okay.
within that side of the building.
We're gonna start selling pizza out of hotels.
It's kind of what happens when you get the cart before the horse.
Yes.
okay.
Could walk across the street there, didn't it? What's the problem?
So this suffices for the traffic review that they're supposed to
It
present?
provides you with that, and if you accept this traffic study as it's delivered to you, then the construction plans will come forward and they will be ready to,
Do we need to make a motion to,
that is correct.
I move that we approve the traffic study that was presented to us.
You are approving the staff traffic study, not that you like the data, but that it meets the requirements of the ordinance.
That's just what I said.
I second that.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor. Any discussion, any more discussion on the traffic
I
study?
think we had enough discussion.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the motion passes
that we approve the traffic study as presented.
Okay.
So, project update on Thornton's group, notice of violation of overnight parking issue.
John and Jennifer Noe and I had a discussion, along with Mayor Gross last week regarding the Thornton's issue with overnight parking. Jennifer suggested that we may want to tighten our ordinance with regard to overnight parking. I will be bringing forward that language to you at your next meeting for consideration for recommendation to the City Commission so that we can do that. I believe that it was relayed to John that they have been calling the police department to get them to enforce the issues that were present on their parking lot, which is not our responsibility. After we had our discussion, we bring some language forward. Jennifer Noe is going to call the attorney for Thornton's, Ms. Hatchett, and explain to her what process we were engaged in, and then we will sit down and have that discussion with them again. But it is apparent to at least me as staff that their interest in enforcing what they agreed to is minimal. So that's just an update. That's where we are.
Okay.
And then next month you can expect to see some language with regard to that.
Well, is there anything that we can do now? How do you change the ordinance and have any impact on that?
I think, my understanding from the conversation that you all did on Friday is Jennifer was going to research and see what the options the town has and bring that to you all in the next meeting. I don't know if you can go back and retroactively amend your ordinance to affect that, but I think the whole point of the conversation, talking with Thornton's attorney, is to see what we can do to mitigate the situation on both sides.
I'm really disappointed in them. You know, they were very cooperative through the whole process. I thought great to work with. No.
They sold.
Huh? They sold.
The
That's-
Thornton family doesn't own it anymore. December.
Yeah, it was sold.
But it's BP.
Huh?
It's BP now. That's who
Yeah.
owns it, it's BP.
British Petroleum owns it now.
Really?
Yeah.
When the commission chose to extend 6 months, Thornton's family did not own the place. So you gave them another 6 months.
Okay, anything else on item C? Okay, so new business, FEMA submission process for hydraulic studies.
Yes, sir. As I relayed to you last month, the golf club brought a hydraulic report to a meeting with the city manager and I. They have done a study on their property, and they would like to submit this information to FEMA. They want to submit a LOMA. I'll try to quickly get through this because I know we all have lives. A LOMA is a letter of map amendment. All it's saying is that you've submitted the information. FEMA's not going to change the map, and the community's still responsible for enforcing the ordinance as it's drafted. That's what a LOMA, a letter of map amendment, is. There's no engineering review from FEMA's end on that. The second option is to require a LOMAR, which is a letter of map change, which actually submits the hydrology for review. If the applicant submits it, we simply sign something saying, okay, we know they submitted it. It doesn't change what we do at all. They're still in violation of our ordinance. If we submit the hydrology report and they do a full study as a body, if the city commission submits it and asks for review, we can get that review done by FEMA, as we did in the county, if you'll remember, Mr. Campbell, for free. That results in an actual letter of map change, which tells us whether or not they are still with this new hydrology within our ordinance. So I've asked, and John is asking, and the golf club is asking, they were interested as a LOMA. I disagree with that position because it doesn't relieve us of any, I see Brian shaking his head, it doesn't relieve the city of any liability. I requested that the hydrology is already here. I want to submit it from the city so that FEMA will review it, so that if this hydrology is valid, it will result in a map change, so that we can ensure that we're complying with our FEMA ordinance.
Now, this just involves the golf club at Tennessee?
The golf.
They're on the lower end of Birth Creek?
Yes, sir. They have an area that they submitted the hydrology on a very small area of the golf club. I see you smiling. Brian and I have been through this war several times.
Is that the
It's
snack,
useless to
the
us.
snack bar down there?
So we want the hydrology submitted from a known benchmark and a cross-section to a known benchmark and a cross-section so that it's studied accurately by FEMA and reviewed. And if they are out of the flood area in that little piece of ground, go them. If they're not, we don't end up violating our own ordinance by allowing them to build something there. So this body sees all things that go to the commission having to do with planning, and since the flood ordinance is within the zoning ordinance, I am asking you to recommend that the city commission submit for a low mark letter of map revision review by FEMA on the hydrology provided by the golf club.
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Second.
Does that go from benchmark to benchmark? As you said, it needs to.
It does not, no. What I want is in low mark, a letter of map revision. The
Okay.
hydrology requirement is much more stringent than it is,
Okay.
I'm just
I
telling you
get it.
it's not.
Are you saying that the new maps, flood maps are not accurate for that piece of property?
That is correct. It's my understanding that the Corps of Engineers is still working on the data that was produced to have those maps done in 2018. They are insufficient in a number of areas, and this data that will require them to produce will help to contribute to that discussion as well.
So we have a motion that we recommend to the city commission that they order a loan map. Is that right?
That's
Okay,
correct.
so do we have a second?
Second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay.
Thank you. We're done with that.
Annual planning commission training, comprehensive plan.
Thank you.
In your packet, I apologize, Mr. Campbell, who has sat through more hours of training than almost that I've been alive. In your packet, you will see, if you'll remember, we've had 3 community meetings, all held at Burns Park on different aspects of planning and economic development. What I would like to suggest tonight is that we have an honor system. With your permission, this lays out kind of the framework for a comprehensive plan and what it does. And with your permission and with your honor system, I would like to suggest that I email you this presentation. It is very self-explanatory. There's nothing that's going to shock you or surprise you in this. There are live links in it that I want you to click on and actually look at. And I want you to self-train and be prepared to answer a few questions when you come back next month. If you have questions,
So if we went to your presentations, do we have to go through that?
you do. I'll send you an email.
Twice? I was all 3, I think.
Yeah, but those stopped at this point.
Oh, this is over and beyond that.
This is the next step in the Planning Commission's adventure for a comprehensive plan. So, the zoning ordinance discussion that we had regarding traffic, for those of you that remember that conversation a few minutes ago about traffic and the zoning ordinance and all those sorts of things, this will inform a redraft of the zoning ordinance. It has been amended to the point that it is nonsensical in so many areas. As we pull the book out and try to read it, it's somewhat redundant. It's very difficult to read. I would like to suggest that we begin working as a planning commission, small sections at a time, towards a form-based code where we have graphics rather than words. Picture says 1,000 words. And go through the zoning ordinance and try to fix some of the conflicts and the duplicate information and the murky language that appears almost everywhere. So, do I have a consensus?
I mean, Joy's still not letting me turn on the heat, so I'm willing to stay in this climate-controlled room for as long as
All right,
Thanks.
so we're doing it. Ready? Let's get in there. He's ready to go. You want to vote on that? I'm good either way. I mean, I am perfectly amenable to being here. What you're going to find is what a comprehensive plan is, has elements.
So does anybody need Sharon to teach them personally, or is everybody good? do it online.
You can email
Or you can
me,
email it tonight?
call me, but this presentation will go to you as a clickable, linkable document in your email.
But even
And
I
when you come back, I will have 5 questions and I'll know if you read
On
it.
your phone. Do it on your
Okay.
All right?
Anybody opposed to that idea?
No.
I think we're good. Anything else?
Well, you need to do that in form of a motion and vote because you're required to have this training every year by the state.
Okay. Somebody want to make a motion? Well, besides,
Let's make a motion that we do our planning commission training via email,
Electronically.
electronically.
okay, do we have a second?
Second.
Do we have any discussion on that motion? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Brian, are you opposed?
I kinda am, hold on.
Okay, the motion passes. I think Brian, are you opposed for the record?
No, I'm
Okay.
okay with it.
Just want to make sure John has
Brian, I
it.
want you to understand, I've been through this at least 30
So,
times.
is there anything else?
No, other than at the next planning commission meeting, answer your
There's a
5
quiz.
questions and I can certify you.
Okay, all right. Meeting adjourned.